Welcome to the Faith Broadcast. Thank you for streaming today. Something good is going to happen to you, so expect miracles. I'm Carrick Butler, and I believe that the message you're about to hear is going to encourage you, it's going to inspire you, and it's going to help you live the supernatural lifestyle of faith. Open your heart. God has something special just for you today. Here's today's message. Daniel chapter 1, verse 1. During the third year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord gave him victory over King Jehoiakim of Judah and permitted him to take some of the sacred objects from the temple of God. So Nebuchadnezzar took them back to the land of Babylonia and placed them in the treasure house of his God. Now, we've previously done a deep dive into the book of Daniel. Put a link there if you want to study all the background of why Jerusalem is now besieged and now people are being taken from the land. Long story short, they turned away from God. They stopped following God. They stopped resting. They stopped living by faith. And the enemy was allowed to come in, take control, and took, notice what it said, it took vessels or sacred objects from the house of God. Now, the sacred objects, these were vessels used in the temple of the Lord. These were made of gold and silver. They were so valuable that Nebuchadnezzar put them in the treasury of his God. So these weren't, okay, cool, they had some plastic forks, some plastic spoons or sporks in the house of God. No. In the house of God, there were these vessels, these vases of gold and silver that were dedicated to the exclusive use of the temple of God. So these weren't just common items. These were dedicated, exclusive things. They were set apart, or they were called holy. That's what the word holy means. It means set apart. They were set apart for a specific use. They were set apart for a specific purpose. They were holy for the Lord God. But notice what happened. Someone came in and took the holy and placed it among the unholy. Came in, took all these holy vessels and took them to Babylon, which is modern-day Iraq, and put them in a temple to a false god. Notice what it says next. Verse 3. Then the king ordered his chief of staff to bring to the palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and of other noble families who've been brought to Babylon as captives. He said, select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men. He said, make sure they are well-versed in every branch of learning and gifted with knowledge and good judgment and are suited to serve in the royal palace. Train these young men in the language and literature of Babylon. The king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchens. They were to be trained for 3 years. Then they would enter the royal service. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were 4 of the young men chosen, all from the tribe of Judah. The chief of staff renamed them with these Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar. Hananiah was called Shadrach. Mishael was called Meshach. And Azariah was called Abednego. Now I submit to you this, that the only holy vessels taken from Judah wasn't just the objects of the temple. The only holy things taken from Jerusalem weren't just the things that were in the temple. I submit to you that these 4 young men were holy vessels of God. These young men were set apart for God. And now they're taken from their home and placed among the unholy. They were holy vessels to God. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah were living holy vessels to the Lord. But I need you to picture this, because a lot of times when we read through the Bible, we think everybody, because we've seen certain pictures, we think that everybody in the Bible was 80 plus. They were all gray, and they lost all their hair. Because those are the pictures we've seen created over the centuries. But I need you to understand, Daniel and his 3 friends were 15 years old. So Sean, come help me for a second. Get Sean. Sean, come and help me for a second. They're friends. Yes, you, Sean. Yes. I need you to imagine this, because Sean's a little bit older than they were when they were taken. And congrats on getting a license, man. Proud of you. So imagine this. Daniel and his 3 friends were around Sean's age, taken from the only home they ever known, taken to a foreign land in a language they did not speak, with people they did not know. They don't know if they'll ever see their families again. They don't know if they'll ever go home again. These 15-year-olds were taken from their land and placed in a foreign place. They were holy. They lived for God. Yet, because of situations created before they were born, they were taken from home and taken to a foreign land to serve under an emperor not known for his temperance or his patience. As we'll get to, these young men are in literally dangerous places. Thanks, Sean. So think about this. What will be going through your mind? 15-year-old, taken from anything that made you comfortable, feel safe, taken captive to a foreign land. And you got to think, as 15-year-olds, they made decisions to live holy before God. And it says they were well-versed, meaning they were smart. They got 4.0s, so they're thinking, man, you got to think if you're this 15-year-old, I'm excelling in class. I'm doing all these good things. Everything's going well. And they qualified to be taken. All their hard work got them snatched up. Think about what's going on in their mind as they go through this highway in the desert to Babylon. All their homes are burned down. The city where they were has been destroyed. It was besieged first. So can you imagine the drama and the trauma from going through a siege? An empire's army surrounds your city and cuts off every way out until your king gives up. Imagine the days and the weeks and the months until they gave up. And now these friends, these 4 friends, are in Babylon. But they're holy vessels to the Lord. He said, could a person really be a vessel? Yes, go with me real quick to 2 Timothy chapter 2. 2 Timothy chapter 2. You see, the decision to live for God is not one that you delay till you're older. They made this decision young. And it was a quality decision because, as you'll see, it sustained them. So the decisions you make for God while you're young are important and can set you up for success in your future. Don't believe the lies of the world that says, well, you're young, live wild, and then get your life right. The world will make you think that if you live for God while you're young, you're wasting your life. But I'm telling you, it is a very honorable thing and precious thing to God when people who are young make a decision. We serve Jesus no matter our age. As we just sang, who wouldn't serve a God like this? And these men made a decision to serve while they were young. Notice what Paul was telling Timothy here. He says, nevertheless, the solid foundation of God stands, having this seal: the Lord knows those who are his. And let everyone who names the name of Christ depart from iniquity. Notice this example Paul gives. But in a great house, there are not only vessels of gold and silver, but also of wood and clay, some for honor and some for dishonor. There, if anyone cleanses himself from the latter, he will be a vessel for honor, sanctified and useful for the master, prepared for every good work. Flee also youthful lust, but pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. But avoid foolish and ignorant disputes, knowing that they generate strife. Notice this, and that's one of the reasons I don't get into debates with people online, because I could debate and win, but they still wouldn't change. So why would I waste my time, my breath, my energy, and my typing ability? You don't have to win every single debate. Did the Lord tell you to talk to him about it? No. Then keep your peace. You could be arguing with AI and ruined your day because you got into a foolish debate. But notice, Paul told Timothy that those who depart from these things make themselves a holy vessel, sanctified or set apart for God's use. Notice it's not God who makes you an honorable vessel. Notice what Paul said here. If these individuals depart from these things or cleanse themselves from these things, they will become a vessel of honor. So whether you are a vessel of honor, able to be used by God, is not on God, it's on you. I'll say it again. Whether you are a vessel that God can use is not on God, it's on you. And these 4 young men in Daniel chapter 1 made the decision to live in a way where God could use them. And God saw them. Because you had to think, now they're in the limelight of biblical history, but before they were not in the limelight. Yes, they're a part of the noble family. Yes, they're a part of the royal family, but it doesn't mean they had all the shine that everybody was watching them. So when it was quiet, when no one was watching, they made the decision to be holy. When no one was looking, no one was paying attention to them, the world is sieged around them, they made a decision to live set apart, and God saw them. Just because everybody else doesn't see you does not mean God doesn't see you. Just because no one praised all the right decisions you made because no one was watching you doesn't mean God hasn't seen it. Go back to Daniel with me. So now these 15-year-olds are placed in a forced foreign exchange program. And the king says, you're going to eat the food that I eat. Which you got to think, if you're forced to be anywhere, at least there's some good food, especially any foodies in here. You're like, at least we get the best food, right? You think, okay, things are looking up, but there's a problem with Nebuchadnezzar's food. Sometimes the food for these foreign kings were sacrificed to foreign gods before it came to their table. And when you ate it, you were in agreement with that false god. Other times, this food was not what they were allowed to eat according to the word of God, or it was prepared in a way where they knew they could not eat it because of what God told them to do. You might think, well, that's small, Pastor. That's petty. They should just eat the food and, do whatever else God wants them to do. It's okay if they compromise in this small area. It's okay. God knows their heart. If they just compromise here. But I'm telling you, whatever you compromise to keep, you will eventually lose. And whatever you bow down to, going up the mountain will rule you when you get to the top. Notice what it says in verse 8. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He was determined. Think about this. This 15-year-old is determined. I'm not even going to defile myself with the foods that I eat. So that determination went to everything in his life. What is he doing? I'm making a decision to live set apart. Because we can sing that question, who wouldn't serve a God like this? But when it comes to living it, there may be some different answers. Yes, you sang, shouted, ran, jumped. But when you leave this house, will you still sing that song and answer the same way Daniel did? He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods. But notice how he went about to do this. He didn't just go and form a protest. He didn't just go and just start screaming at Nebuchadnezzar, you are evil! He didn't do any of that. He went and talked to the guy in charge and says, is it okay if I don't eat this? Now notice what happened. It says, now God had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel. Another version says that God gave Daniel favor. So when you know you got favor, you can talk different. When you know you got favor, you don't have to barge in a room and make people pay attention to you. You just clothe yourself in gentleness. Gentleness does not change your determination. Gentleness does not change your goal. Gentleness determines how you talk about it. God has given him favor, so he has favor, so he walks in gentleness and said, hey, I know Nebuchadnezzar said we had to do this, but can you make an exception for me? You got to think, who is this 15-year-old who's been taken from his home, who asks the government of an empire to make an exception for him? Notice what it replies. But he responded, I'm afraid of Nebuchadnezzar, who has ordered you to eat this food and wine, and if you become pale and thin compared to everybody else your age, he's going to cut my head off. Imagine, he's the chief of staff, so he's pretty high up in the government. But he says, if you don't look healthy, and he finds out that it was my fault because I agreed to it, he's going to kill me. Daniel spoke with the attendant who had been appointed by the chief of staff to look after Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. How about this? Please test us for 10 days on a diet of vegetables and water. And so when you look at the Hebrew and Aramaic words, this is vegetables, this is pulse, so it's almonds and different things like that. He says, give us this. Just watch us for 10 days. Notice the confidence and the faith of this 15-year-old. Just watch us for 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, see how we look compared to everybody else who are eating the king's food. Then make your decision in light of what you see. The attendant agreed to Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So after that, the attendant fed them only vegetables instead of the food and wine provided by the others. Some people say, well, I want to eat the Daniel diet. Well, knock yourself out if you want to. But the diet wasn't special. The determination was special. Say it again. Daniel's diet wasn't special. Daniel's determination was special. And that determination, driven by faith, got miraculous results. And policies were changed for their benefit. When the favor of God is on you, policies and laws will be changed for your benefit. When the favor of God is on you, policies and laws will be changed for your benefit. Everybody else had to live by that rule, except Daniel and his friends. Because of the determination, because of the favor, because they made a decision, we're going to be set apart. Notice what it says next. God gave these 4 young men an unusual aptitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom. And God gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meanings of visions and dreams. So these teenagers become exceptionally smart. They were already smart, they're already gifted, but they start going to a whole nother level where their brilliance is rare. They are now standing out among all the other youth because of the determination, because they decided to live set apart, because of the favor. And then on top of that, God gave Daniel the ability to interpret the meanings of visions and dreams. So this is all happening while they're teenagers. All this stuff didn't happen once they were grown. This is happening in their latter teenage years. Notice what happens after these 3 years. So now they're 18. When the training period ordered by the king was completed, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, so they entered the royal service. Whenever the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom. So all the people Nebuchadnezzar used to turn to advice, he's used to talking to them, but when he goes to Daniel and his 3 friends, they are 10 times smarter than their teachers. Listen to that. 10 times smarter than their teachers, 10 times smarter than all the wise men of Babylon. So here come these 18-year-olds in the room full of the wise, and they are 10 times smarter. So go to chapter 2. Now, before we go to chapter 2, look at verse 21.
Before some of you try to tune out and says, oh, he's only talking to the young people today. Look at verse 21. Daniel remained in the royal service unto the first year of King Cyrus. And this is King Cyrus of Persia, or modern-day Iran. This lets you know that Daniel served in government in Babylon for over 70 years. Emperors came and went, and Daniel was still here. Governments changed, and Daniel was still there. Different powers came in, because this wasn't like you had a president, then another president. No, one empire would conquer another empire. Everybody else would go, yet Daniel stayed there for over 70 years. He was sustained because of the decision that he made. He was sustained because of his determination. He was sustained because of the favor. So don't just think this is just for the young people. No matter what decade you're in right now, God can and will sustain you and give you favor. The world may change. The world may shake. Presidents come and go. Governors come and go. Mayors come and go. Courts come and go. But you can be planted because of your determination to live set apart and live under the favor of God. So chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, more like a nightmare. And he wakes up and he can't remember what he dreamed. But he's so bothered he can't go back to sleep. So he calls all the wise men and he says, if you can do this for me, I'll make you rich, I'll promote you, I'll give you all this power. I dreamed a dream, and I need to know what it meant. And the wise men said, cool, tell us the dream, and then we'll interpret it. But Nebuchadnezzar said, well, that's a problem. I don't remember it. So they said, no, just think about it, tell us, and then we'll interpret it. He says, oh, no, I know you're trying to trick me. So he says, if you can't tell me the dream and interpret it, I'm going to kill you all. He's not known for his temperament. And so they said, no one has ever asked anybody to do this. The only body who could do it is God. Only the gods can answer a request like this. And Nebuchadnezzar says, oh, well, you're dead. So he tells his executioner, the captain of the guard, go and kill them all. So remember, Daniel's friends, they about 18 at this time. And here comes the captain of the guard going to carry out the execution order. And Daniel says, whoa, bro, let's slow this down. Why is the order from the king so extreme and needs to be carried out right now? And the guard told him, think about this. Who is this 18-year-old to stop the executioner and ask him questions? Favor, determined, set apart. And he says, well, don't do what the king said. Let me go talk to the king. Okay, 18-year-old. This king just said, kill everybody, and you want to go into the presence of the one who said, kill everybody. And so he talked to the king, and he says he gave him a certain date. He says, let me go pray about it, and then I'll come back and tell you what your dream and what it meant. And the king said, okay. Who is this 18-year-old? He's set apart. He's determined. He's got favor. And he's gifted. So Daniel and his 3 friends, they get together and they prayed. Verse 18 so said they would desire, request mercy of the God of heaven concerning the secret. Then verse 19 says, then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. So notice this. They prayed and then went to sleep. You would think, who can sleep at a time like this? The king said he's going to kill you all, and y'all take a nap. They prayed, went to sleep, and while they slept, Daniel has a vision. And God answers his prayer request. And so Daniel woke up praising God. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and set up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, has made known to me now what we desired of you, for you have made known to us the solution to the king's problem. So then Daniel goes to the executioner and said, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me to the king. I will tell him what he interpreted. So quickly, they bring Daniel in. And he's announced, I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king the interpretation of his dream. The king said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation of it? Daniel answered the king, the mysterious secret which the king has demanded, neither the wise men, enchanters, magicians, nor astrologers can show the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what it is that shall be in the latter days, at the end of days. And then he begins to tell him the dream. Because the dream wasn't just about that day. That dream goes even into our current day. The king saw a statue made of different materials, starting with gold and silver and bronze and iron and clay, and those represented the coming empires. So one of the things you realize in the book of Daniel, and you'll see in this vision, other visions, that God is telling Daniel and his contemporaries things that will take place over the next few thousand years. And Daniel's able to interpret this and explain it. Because at the end of the vision, there's a stone that comes from heaven and hits the statue at its feet. And then the whole statue crumbles and that stone fills the whole earth and becomes a mountain. He said, well, what is that mountain? The kingdom of God. And Daniel was proclaiming this hundreds of years before Jesus would ever show up. Thousands of years before he would ever return. He's saying this is what's going to happen at the very end. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face. Get this. The emperor of the empire falls on his face. Kings don't do that. Emperors don't do that. But here's this 18-year-old. Here's the emperor. The emperor falls down before him and says, of a truth, your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secret mysteries, seeing that you could reveal this secret mystery. Then the king made Daniel great and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and to be the chief governor over all the wise men of Babylon. Notice this. He's now that dude. He's in charge over Babylon. That's the capital city of the empire. Whatever happens in that capital has to have his approval. He's 18. And then he says, I'm going to put you now in charge over all the wise men. Now, see, that phrase wise men sounds very familiar to us in our culture, because these were also the ones who were called the Magi. How did the Magi know to look for Jesus? 700 years before, Daniel told him, he's coming, and when he gets here, look for this. That's who this 18-year-old is. This determined, set apart person with the favor of God. And then he says, don't forget my 3 brothers here. Promote them too. And so his 3 friends were put over the affairs of the province of Babylon as well. But Daniel remained in the gate of the king's court, meaning he's right there with the king at all the time. The king is not doing nothing without him. Now remember I said this king is not known for his temperance, his self-control. He's got an ego issue. You think you know people who have ego issues? You've never met a Nebuchadnezzar. Because then he gets a good idea, says, you know what? I'm going to make a statue in my image. It's going to be of pure gold. And whenever, I'm going to make up a special song, an exclusive play. I'm going to, whenever this EP plays, you got to bow down to my statue. Think about this. Whenever you hear the beat drop, you got to bow. That's why you got to be careful what you listen to, because some songs are made to make you bow. Not every song's okay. Oh, I'm not listening to the words, I'm just listening to the beat. Yeah, right. That's why you can repeat everything. You can't listen to everything because you're not everyone. You can't listen to everything because you're not everyone. Who are you? Set apart for the master's use. Set apart for the plan of God. I'm not saying you're better than anybody. You just realize you ain't everybody because you made a decision to be set apart so God can use you for honorable things. And so time goes, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as we know them, we're out there, and the song begins. Everybody bows down except them. They're just standing there like, oh, this is awkward. You might say, well, many years must have passed by then. No. They're 21 by this point. Think about this. Faith, Yuri, they're your age, around this age. They're 21, making this decision. At 21, everybody's bowing down, and they're going, Song's playing, and they ain't moving. And you know, they had haters. So the haters said, hey, Nebuchadnezzar, you know those captives that you put over everybody? You know those 21-year-olds that I have to listen to? They played your song and they didn't bow. And Nebuchadnezzar is furious. So he tells them, come in before me. He says, I've heard a rumor that you didn't bow down to my statue when they played my hit #1 song. But I'm in a good mood today. I'm going to give you another chance. I'm going to play the song again. And if you bow down, everything's forgiven. But if you don't bow down, I'm going to throw you into the fiery furnace. What God can deliver you from my hands? But notice what these 21-year-olds said. Verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter." If that is the case, what is the case? If you're going to throw us in to the fiery furnace because we won't bow, if that is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. You asked a question, I got an answer. If you throw us in, he will deliver us. Not just he can deliver us, he will deliver us. Listen to this 21-year-old. He will deliver us. But if not what? If God doesn't deliver? No. If you don't throw us in. Not if God doesn't deliver us. That wasn't a question in these 21-year-old mind. God's going to deliver us. But if you don't throw us in, we're going to let you know. We're not going to serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Then it says Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and his face changed before them. Then he said, heat the furnace 7 times hot. That makes no sense. Sin will make you stupid. The normal temperature will kill everybody. 7 times. It's still going to kill everybody. But the heat was so intense from this furnace. It says when they took Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and tied them up and threw them in the furnace, the heat was so intense that the guards who tossed them in died because of the heat. Why? Because they weren't made of the right stuff. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego land in the furnace. And they get up. They get up. And they start walking around. And Nebuchadnezzar and his court are expecting to hear screams. But they hear nothing. And so Nebuchadnezzar looks at the furnace and calls an advisor and says, "Didn't we throw 3 guys in there?" "Yeah, king, we threw 3 people in." But he says, "I see 4 walking around in that fire." Remember, they went in bound, but the fire burned up the ropes, melted away all the chains. So they got up And now it wasn't just the three. There's a fourth man in the fire. And the king says that fourth one looks like the Son of God. When those three men said, our God can and will, Jesus hurled himself through time and space and got in the fire with those 21-year-olds. You have to understand, he wasn't even born yet. He was just known as the pre-incarnate Son of God. Yet that fourth man got in the fire with them and walked around with them. The fourth man in the fire is with you today. No matter what fire you find yourself in, no matter what situation you find yourself in, no matter what circumstance you find yourself in, the fourth man in the fire is with you today. Say, he's with me today. And we already sang his name earlier. What is his name? Jesus. The fourth man in the fire. The fourth man. So Nebuchadnezzar goes, yo, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come on out. And so when they come out, everybody's checking them out. They don't even smell like smoke. You don't have to look like what you've been through. I said, you don't have to look like what you've been through. You can go through and be on the other side, and people said, you've never had a problem in your life. Everything's been good in your perfect life. What happened? The fourth man and the fire got in there with you and preserved you. Nebuchadnezzar realizes once again there's someone higher than him. And at the end of all this drama, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got promoted again. On the other side of the fire, there was promotion. On the other side of the fire, there was reward. On the other side of the fire, there was exaltation, because these men were determined to live set apart and not bow to a culture that demanded them to bow. I'm telling you, if you bow, you will burn. But if you don't bow, you can't burn. If you bow, you will burn. But if you don't bow, you can't burn. The men who threw them in the fire weren't made out of the right stuff, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were made of the right stuff because they determined not to defile themselves. They determined to live set apart, and the favor of God was on them. They made a decision to live set apart. And no matter what happened, they kept going up. No matter what the government did, they kept going up. No matter what their haters did, they kept going up. No matter what the culture did, they kept going up. I'm telling you, if you humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, you yield to his plan, you live the way he tells you to live, the scripture says he will exalt you in due time, at the set time. So that becomes your story. No matter what they do, you keep going up. You would think that people would give up messing with these guys, because Nebuchadnezzar rules for over 40 years, then he's gone, yet they're still there. His son rules, and Daniel's still in charge. Nebuchadnezzar's grandson rules, and Daniel's still in charge. And they promote Daniel again. Then another empire comes in, and Daniel's still in charge. He's constant. And so they realized there was a secret to Daniel's life. They knew he prayed. They said, we can't find a fault with this guy unless it's concerning the law of his God, concerning his prayer life. Because Daniel was known for praying 3 times a day. He would go home, open his windows, face Jerusalem, and pray. So they said, let's go into the king when Daniel's not there and get him to make a rule that can't be changed. And say for 30 days, nobody can pray to any God but you, king. And they really boosted the king's ego with that. This is a new king. He doesn't know all the stories from before. So he agreed. And so the law goes out. Nobody can pray to anyone but the king. And you know what Daniel does? Just like normal, he goes home, opens those windows, and he prays. The haters see it, and they go to the king. Hey, you know that dude in charge? He ain't listening to you. And it says all day the king realized it was a trap, and he tried to figure out a way to rescue Daniel. But the way of that government was set up, once the king said it, it is law. So he couldn't. So they took Daniel and threw him in the lion's den and rolled a stone over it so Daniel couldn't escape. And so no one could help him out. This is that night the king couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. He stayed up all night. And then he's the first one out of the palace getting to where Daniel was thrown. They roll away the stone, and he says, oh, Daniel, was your God, who you always serve, able to deliver you? He's waiting for an answer. And Daniel says, first, he said something. O king, live forever. For my God sent his angel and shut the mouth of the lion because I was innocent and did nothing to hurt you. So the king couldn't sleep, but Daniel had a great night's sleep with a lion for a pillow because the lions would not bother him. They would not even open their mouths to hurt him. They wouldn't scratch him. They wouldn't paw him. The angel of God showed up and calmed down that lion's den. This determined man. You see, by this point, he's not that teenager anymore. He's now seasoned. These are decades later. He's seen emperors and empires come and go. So I'm telling you, to my seasoned family, God will send his angel and shut the mouths of lions that have set themselves against you. Because you might say, well, the lions weren't hungry. But this is right afterwards, the king threw all Daniel's haters in there, and they were dead before they hit the ground. The angel of God responded to Daniel's faith. Because when the book of Hebrews talks about these four guys, and it says, by faith, they quenched the violence of fire. By faith, they shut the mouths of lions. What was their faith? No matter what, we serve God. No matter what, we follow the plan of God for our life. And this man of prayer, I'm out of time, so I can't get into it today. His prayer was so powerful. Angels would show up when he prayed. When he was not even finished praying, an angel would show up and give an answer. So remember, Daniel's in power for a long time. So 70 years goes by, and that was the punishment on Judah. 70 years goes by, and he realized, wait a minute, God said we'd only be here 70 years. But 70 years have come and gone, and yet we're still here, so he begins to pray. And God talks to him more about that situation, but when Daniel prayed, according to Ezra chapter 1, verse 1, it says God stirred up the spirit of another emperor, and he made a decree saying, all those who were taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar from Judah, go home now. And not only are you going home, I'm raising an offering for your God. Not only are you going home, I'm sending people to protect you as you go home. And everything Nebuchadnezzar took and put in the temple of his God. Remember those sacred objects we talked about at the beginning of this message? All of those things go back to, when it was all said and done, the enemy got nothing. When it was all said and done, the enemy got nothing. I know it looks like he's got something right now, but that's why it says faith and patience gets you to a place where you're complete, lacking nothing. If you stick with this faith and walk the way God says, when it's all said and done, the enemy has nothing. Yet Daniel stayed in Babylon because that's where his assignment was. He's praying about an answer, and he couldn't get an answer. Now you got to know, this dude is used to getting answers. He prayed, an angel show up before he could finish praying. So, this dude is used to getting answers when he prayed. But he's praying about this thing, and he doesn't get an answer that day. He doesn't get an answer the next day. It says he goes 3 weeks praying about this one thing. He's persisting in prayer, even though the answer doesn't show up immediately. And all of a sudden, a heavenly being shows up and says, I've come for your words. Listen to that. I've come because you said something. He says, I was dispatched 3 weeks ago, but on my way to you, I ran into some interference from the demonic princes over Persia. One of the things when you read through the Bible, you see it here as well as in Ezekiel and in Isaiah, the double kingdom system and situation, where we don't see it, but there are demonic powers described by Paul in Ephesians 6 that sit over cities and regions and countries and areas. He says, I was coming with an answer for you, but they blocked me. And I fought with them for 21 days. Daniel's still praying, and the fight goes on. And so Daniel kept praying, and all of a sudden, angelic reinforcements arrived with Michael. Well, why was Michael sent? Because Daniel kept praying. A lot of us quit because we didn't see it on day one. Daniel kept praying till he got to day 21, and that answer showed up. And notice, these weren't low-level devils resisting the prayers of Daniel's. These were devils over empires and major regions. That Satan's rank and file showed up to stop this man from getting his answer. You have to understand that when you pray about things, just because it's not immediate, it's not because God does not listen. It's because you've run into some interference. Because Daniel's not just praying for himself anymore. His prayers are affecting the destinies of nations. And if he persists, countries change, empires change. But it all started with that kid who determined not to defile himself. And look where God took him. Because in one of Daniel's many visions and dreams, he talks about the Messiah and calls him the Son of Man. Have you ever read through the Gospels? What is one of the number one things Jesus kept calling himself? The Son of Man. Every time Jesus called himself the Son of Man, he quoted Daniel. Those magi showed up at Jesus when he was about 2 or 3 years old because Daniel taught them. The decisions you make for God today impact generations. It's not just about you. There's somebody on the other side of your obedience. There's somebody on the other side of your dedication. There's somebody on the other side of your call. And notice Daniel's dedication, his determination changed things, not just in his day, but for thousands of years to come. You got to think, when Jesus and Mary and Joseph had to head down to Egypt, they needed some supplies because they were being gone for 3 years. They needed provision because Herod was actively trying to find Jesus and kill him. Where is this provision going to come from? It was set in motion when this teenager said, I will not defile myself even with the king's food. That decision went over 700 years in the future and set up provision for the Messiah. God told him things about our day and time and years ahead of us because he decided to follow God. He set himself apart for God's use and was a man of constant prayer. What can God do for you and through you if you set yourself aside for God's use and you stay persistent in prayer? Stand to your feet. What can God do in you? What can God do through you? If you make that decision to serve God like Daniel and his 3 friends did. That no matter what the culture does, you decide not to bow. No matter what happens, you decide not to give up praying. Remember, Jesus told a parable that we would keep praying and not quit. And at the end of the parable, he says, when I come back, will I find faith in the earth? Faith of people who will keep on praying no matter what. No matter the distraction. No matter the circumstance. No matter the attack. Will you keep serving God and keep praying? We sang, who would serve a God like this? You answered. But this is what it looks like every day. Every day making decisions to live for him. Every day making decisions to live set apart. Every day making decisions to, I'm going to take some time and pray no matter what. But notice, Daniel wasn't just praying about himself. He also had time to pray about others and change the course of nations. Remember about a month or so ago, God said he wanted more prayer to rise up from us. That happens in our individual lives. That happens in our families. And some of the things we'll announce later this summer, what we'll do corporately where prayer is concerned. He needs you to get into your place today. Stay consistent and constant and faithful even when no one's looking. To stay determined even when it's easy to not live determined. Can he trust you to live in a way that he can use you to do great things? Will you dare to go to another level to see what God can do through you? Not just what can God do for you. What can he do through you? He doesn't just want to work through preachers and pastors and apostles and prophets and evangelists, pastors and teachers. He wants to work through every single one who calls on the name of Jesus and decides to live for him. It's time for you to discover what God can do through you, especially if you live set apart to him.
Thank you for streaming this broadcast. We're so glad that you tuned in today. I want to encourage you, follow us online on social media. We put encouraging content all the time on our social media channels. And also, we have a daily newsletter called Faith in the Morning. We have a daily podcast and a daily newsletter called Faith in the Morning to help you start your day with faith and encouragement. I encourage you, sign up, subscribe, visit us online at carrickbutler.com, and you'll be able to get connected with all the things that we have just for you. Visit us at carrickbutler.com. Have a wonderful day. And remember, God loves you so much. Know that something good is going to happen to you. So expect miracles. God bless.